part of this.
I do have a picture. You can change. You can take a picture. Yeah. I looked at this. I was reading through the report today. I said, "You gotta be kidding me," which I haven't seen actually.
This is a while.
Did they have like they had? They did, yeah, but maybe like when they built this, it's all original.
Jeremy, we need a laptop to pay for itself in one meeting.
That's crazy.
They did too. I came to school. It's like, what the heck is this?
I started,
Picture?
I started itemizing certain pages out here.
Yeah,
And it's like, page 222.
Is this going out to people? What? Is it going to see this?
Nobody cares about ours.
It would just be this table.
Yeah. We know the dark secret of this dog. This picture.
All right, we'll call meeting to order. Start with roll call.
Okay, Mayor Menny,
Here.
Brenneman,
Here.
Kill,
Here.
Monahan,
Here.
Horn,
Here.
Nelson,
Here.
and Jones.
Here. All right. Do we have any additions to the agenda, or do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
So moved.
Motion second, discussion. None? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And no additional bills submitted for payment on there. Passed. We're a couple minutes early for our 7:05 hearing. So, what we'll do is move to second reading of ordinance number 652, which is the rezone application for tract 1 of the county auditor subdivision, southwest corner, Hartford City unplatted. So, that's second item under ordinance resolutions and names.
I make a motion to approve second reading of second ordinance 652.
Second. Alright, motion and second, discussion. Thoughts, questions, no changes?
Yep, no changes.
Same. No discussion, we'll vote. Start with Jones,
Yes.
Brennan,
Yep.
Monahan, Keel,
Yes.
Horn,
Yes.
and Nelson.
Yes.
Alright. Carried. Tell you what, being we're still at 7:02, we'll jump down to reports and have a sheriff deputy report with Deputy Elders.
Right away.
So yeah, right away, does that sound right?
Works for me. Busy month. Calls for service, we had 124 calls for service, 24 traffic violations. We had a vandalism, we did have a weapons violation, 2 narcotics violations, and 3 people were taken into custody. That was on other calls, that one warrant that was served, and that kind of was related to the narcotics violation, and the other stuff, the weapons violation was also narcotics violation. Other than that, that's pretty much what happened. And some of the civil stuff, like the 124 calls, anything from loose dog to, traffic, parking. Did talk to some construction crews that were coming through. Jared made quite an impact with them because they still remember him from back in the day as far as getting trailers off the streets and getting them moved, so they were pretty compliant, and we had good conversations, so they know what the rules are. Any questions on that?
Of those calls that you had, does that include the 3, 6, 7, 7,000 numbers too? The routine
Any
calls?
call for service, if it's emergency or
For
non-emergency, basically the way the program works, any calls for service for the Hartford area, for the 320 code, pops up and I can go through and just kind of look at the different calls.
Okay.
So, some of them are, some of them are unsubstantiated, I think we had a call of a vehicle, that they thought was using narcotics, we weren't able to find them,
Mhm.
weren't able to get a description, so that would be a typical, call for service where we're not able to find them, and
Gotcha.
probably just passing through.
I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit,
Yep.
because we chatted about it a little bit, and I wanna get your input. Notoriously, as we change up seasons, which we're experiencing as of today, we have, vandalism that takes place in the city bathrooms, parks, bathrooms, and so on and so forth. Your input on what we possibly could do to deter that a little bit, and,
I'm familiar with the community, and, being in the school system and working with Jared and some of the vandalism stuff that happens. I've got my opinions, they might be extreme to one end, obviously, I'm working with the council now. I know I'm way on the other end as far as my opinions.
it's okay.
It's, when I think of a park or a city park or something that a city maintains, I don't think of it as a place for 10 unsupervised 10 to 20-year-olds to hang out. I just don't picture that in my mind. I picture families, I picture picnics, gatherings, family reunions, swimming pool, supervised, area for people to play. I don't like the idea of the skate park, which is now apparently a bike park, because I believe there was about 5 bicycles in there tonight with kids, and I didn't see a helmet or a elbow pad, and I don't think there's anybody there over the age of 11 years old, unsupervised. There is a supervised, state-of-the-art skate park in Sioux Falls. So it's not like we're taking away something that's not 15 miles, it's 15 miles away. I don't know if any of your kids are playing Fortnite anymore, it's like, apparently this might be a moot conversation because all the kids are doing is playing this game, so. I don't know if they'll ever leave the house ever again. Just something I wanna bring up, just because obviously we haven't had the problem yet, I haven't seen it yet this year, but just make you aware that I am thinking about it and trying to come up with solutions. The vandalism, I got extreme opinions on that, tear it down and put up porta potties. Why are we maintaining that facility? I talked to people and they said they wouldn't go in there, they go behind a tree before they go in there. Just because it's old. I'm talking to them in the city park, it's dingy and it's just not a facility that they feel comfortable with. But that's just from what I've heard, like I said, I'm always on the extreme law enforcement part of it, but, and that's my opinion. Again, we haven't had any problems yet. But I think it's probably gonna be the same as it has been in the past. But we're just gonna continue putting money into these things, repairing them.
One of your examples earlier, you mentioned if you see 10s to 20-year-olds, 10 to 20-year-olds hanging out. If you see a whole group of them hanging out in the park, you typically go and monitor that, check in on that group, see what they're up to, or
Usually we'll get a call, and that's another thing too, if there's any way to, get it out to the public. If you see something, say something. It's a lot easier for me to walk up to a group if I get a complaint, as opposed to just, am I imposing, people have the right to just do what they wanna do without me coming up and asking them questions on what they're doing. Example, probably 5 years ago, maybe it's less than that, but got a report of a 58-year-old hanging out with some juveniles. I go to the park, I get out, he comes walking towards me, doesn't look like a very good character. Hey sir, you're not doing anything illegal, are you? He starts shaking, I'm like, God, you don't have drugs on me, do you? I work narcotics for 2 years, I don't. Well, geez, if you do, you might want to give it to me. All these are catchphrases, I'm not searching him, I'm not doing this, when he pulls up, a pipe. Get him to the pipe, get him down to the jail. He's got a bag of, he's got a pill on him, which is basically a hydrocodone. Turns out what he was doing in that park is he had some younger teenager go back, steal his grandma's hydrocodone so that he could have it. Again, unsupervised teenagers in a park. That kid was 14. So that's, that people don't realize, I see it, it doesn't necessarily go out. people don't understand, you know, or don't see that part of it. But, and he ended up getting convicted. But that's one case in 3 years that I know about, but I know that park has kind of attracted an element that I just don't think the, you know, like the bike park, do we want to incur that much liability having a bike park in Hartford? And that's up to the council. I just see liability and lawsuits when I go by it. And they're not doing anything that, you know, I think, you know, no kid should ever go through life without breaking his arm at least once. And that's part of it, you know, but then again, if it's on city property and the age that we're in nowadays, with a very litigious society, are we incurring any type of liability?
Counselor,
So,
do you wanna expand on that a little bit, liability-wise, the skate park? Anything that, we have signage there now? I know that doesn't have a, you know, a whole load of beans in the court of law, probably, but is there anything else you wanna expand on, what Tyrone said?
Well, the message from Tyler seems to be that every time you have a public facility which is going to be unsupervised, you're having some risk of somebody getting hurt. I think he said that the facility that they have in Sioux Falls is an example of a good facility because it is in fact supervised. Every facility that you have and that you own and that you operate, if somebody gets hurt, you're gonna be one of the deep pockets that they're gonna look at. And it just is part of the turf of operating those facilities, and that's why you have insurance in the pools through the league, et cetera. But the less you operate, the less your risk. I mean, there's just fewer places.
and the pool is supervised. I mean, you hire lifeguards, you got people there, they're watching. It just seems like it's just kind of all by itself, unsupervised. I don't know. It's just kind of what I see.
Thank you, Tyrone.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll move back up to our 7:05 hearing. 7:05 hearing for the first reading of ordinance 653, the 2018 revised subdivision regulations. This is a big part of our packet that's in there. Teresa and Mitch, I believe you have some updates on the high points for us.
Yeah, I'll let Mitch kind of take over and explain it, but basically, as you know, the last few months, the P&Z board has been working on updating our subdivision regulations. So this has gone through many meetings with the planning and zoning. Mitch has presented a format to them, has kind of gone through everything. This is their final version. They had a public hearing at their last meeting. We had no input from the public. So now it comes to you guys for a public hearing and for review. It's an ordinance, so we'll go through 2 readings, but I will let, like I said, you know, Stockwell's drafted this, so I'll kind of let Mitch explain the highlights of what has changed as far as the difference between our current one.
So in your packet, you have, first document is the subdivision regulation. And then you'll have engineering design standards in there also, that's included. And with the engineering design standards are some supplement sections for water, sewer, and warranty work. So I'll try to kind of just hit the highlights on each one of those documents, but it kind of all starts with the subdivision regulations. This is basically an ordinance to subdivide land within the city limits and also within the joint jurisdictional area that you have with the platting jurisdiction. Okay, so it spells out the requirements in those too. You know, if you open up to it, you have a table of contents, and it's basically 5 articles and an appendix A. You know, what I did is I drafted up a letter here, just kind of some cliff notes, if you will, on the ordinance, which gives kind of a general outline of how everything's structured. But generally, you know, the general structure I'd say is similar to what you have as far as the process goes, as far as the concept plan, preliminary plan, and engineering plans process. What's probably varied more significantly is the replacement of what you had as an assurance agreement. We're replacing that with a construction agreement, which is the document at the end of the appendix, is the appendix of the subdivision regulations. That's actually, you know, 20-some page construction agreement that's replacing that 2-page assurance agreement that you currently have. Okay. What I kind of like to do is just run through each article just a little bit, hit the highlights of them, and then if you guys have questions throughout, just let me know, but I'll try to not spend too much time on this. But Article 1 is the general provisions, and it's gonna spell out the purpose of the subdivision regs, and everything revolves around that purpose, and the purpose is we're trying to prevent premature development, make sure that we're planting land in an efficient, orderly way. So that's what that purpose tries to dictate, and then you'll see that purpose referenced throughout the subdivision reg because we're trying to maintain that purpose of it. Article 1, that article also specifies the jurisdiction, has some language in there, that this applies to the city limits, has some reference to state laws as how it relates to the jurisdictional planning area. So that's kind of all the front end. There's some appeal processes in there, enforcement processes, those types of things. Once you get past that, Article 2 is the subdivision approval process. And that's where we basically narrowed it down to 4 primary steps to approve a plat. The first step is a concept plan, and that is not an engineering document. Developer or anybody that wants to subdivide land can come in with their plan, with a sketch, sit down with city staff and get some initial feedback on it. It's a process that's not necessarily required, but it's definitely recommended for developers so they can get that initial feedback. The preliminary subdivision plan is then the next step, and that's the plan that goes to P&Z. It comes to city staff first, and we review it for comments and for checking against the design standards and those types of things. So city staff reviews it, it goes to P&Z, they recommend approval, and ultimately that plan's come to you folks for approval of that. Okay, we just went through the Knapp's Landing. It's a good example where we just approved that preliminary plan. That's basically what this is in reference to, that step. From there, that preliminary plan is really, it's an engineering document, it has to be done by a licensed engineer. There's not a lot of real detail as far as drainage calcs and those types of things that we need to evaluate to make sure that it meets the standards. What it tries to do is lay out the general layout of the subdivision so that they can get that approval from the boards and then move on to the more engineering detail so that and the reason the developers kind of want it set up that way is so they don't spend a lot of money on engineering fees just to have it shot down by the boards. So that's kind of why it's structured this way. But once they get past the preliminary subdivision plan, it's been approved by council, then they submit their engineering submittals, and that's where they're gonna show us more detail that whatever it is that we feel they need to show that they're meeting the design standards of the city. So that's gonna be drainage calcs is probably the most significant thing in there that they evaluate. Further information on sewer and slopes of their pipes and slopes of their storm sewers and all those types of things that we look at. Those plans do not come to the boards. They're approved administratively between our group, between Teresa and Craig and I. Once those are approved, then the developer can then submit a plat. Okay? And they might plat the entire subdivision that we reviewed. They might plat portions of it, phases of it. But once we have all those engineering documents, then we can look at that plat and know what easements they need to have on those plats, what right-of-ways are you gonna be platting, what infrastructure are you gonna be putting in. Okay? So that basically is the general process to get through platting. Once they get through all those steps, they can plat that land, take it down to the county, because that plat is really what is official down at the county courthouse as far as, subdividing land.
When will construction begin? I think that's what we ran into last year, is construction's moving along, we're concerned because the plat hasn't been approved.
Right.
So
there's 2 different means for them to be able to get through that process. If they're following the concept plan preliminary engineering submittals, they won't be able to pull a construction permit until they've got their engineering documents approved. Okay? From there, they can either go and start working on their improvements and plat later, or they can plat now and under a construction agreement with the city. Okay, so there's 2 different paths they can take, and depending on the developer, they might, And the reason we allow that two different paths is because some developers, you know, if they can, that construction agreement's gonna require bonds and securities, some upfront costs, that, you know, if they can go and build their improvements and then plat later, they can avoid some of those front-end costs on them. So that's, there's, like I said, there's two ways that they can do that.
But it also triggers some taxation things, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So their valuation will go up on those pieces of land if they plat, so that's another reason that some tend to wait with their platting. But that's why we implemented a construction permit, because that's really the permit that they need to be able to go and make those improvements. And with that construction permit, they have to provide all their construction documents for review and engineering submittals for review too, okay? Move on to Article 3, which is plat criteria. In that article, we're simply spelling out, there's a lot of references to state law as far as what they have to show on their plat. Typically you see a map with the layout of the parcel, and then the second page is usually the certificates of ownership that they sign off on. The treasurer has a blank in there, or a line to fill out. I have a line to sign off on. Teresa has a line. They take it down to the county and register of deeds signs off of it. So it tells them exactly all those things that they have to have on that plat document, okay? Article 4, general requirements. This is probably where we start to have some variations from what you currently have. Article 4.1 is assurances. And there's a number of assurances that are required for a plat. So when we see a plat, first thing we ask is, do we have the preliminary plans approved? Do we have, you know, all these front end documents approved? Well, before we can approve that plat, we also need to say, okay, have they constructed improvements? Because if not, we need to enter a subdivision construction agreement. Okay, and that's the first one under 4.1. And that subdivision construction agreement, we'll go on that a little later. That's the Appendix A. That'll lay out all the responsibilities of that developer. Okay, another thing we have to consider on a plat is if there's any areas that are of common use. So we have like an HOA or any type of facility that's not being turned over to the public but is going to be of common use. We need to know that there's maintenance agreements in place for that, or that an HOA is being established. So that's a requirement to have those documents so we know kind of how that's structured. A private street would fall under that as well. Public space contributions is 4.1.3. When they plat land, they've got to meet the requirements for open space, which, how this is written right now, you require them to dedicate 5%, is it 5% of the land?
Yes.
Yeah, 5% of the land of the entire subdivision. That'd be 5% of the entire subdivision as open space, park ground. Or, you know, if it's a situation where it doesn't make, the city doesn't feel it makes sense to have any land dedicated, there's the option of a cash contribution. So that's at city's discretion how that's followed. And that's at $1,000 per acre. 4.1.4 is a paragraph on annexation. And that's really only going to apply to the plats that are outside of city limits. So if we have a plat coming in within our jurisdiction, but it's outside of city limits, there's some language further on that we'll discuss here too, but basically this document will give you the ability to deny those plats or approve them. If you're going to approve a plat in that area, you have the ability to require an annexation agreement. An annexation agreement would be written in a way where once the city becomes contiguous to that property, then they would come into city limits at that time. Something to that effect. Okay. Any questions on any of those assurances?
Just clarification in my own mind, cash contribution can be made in lieu of 5%. We also still have a park fee on our building permit, is that correct?
Yeah. The times when we find ourselves going to the cash contribution is on small plats, you know, smaller ones, and then we might go to that. But if we have a big subdivision line, we want them to try to incorporate parks into their design as much as they can. With the Knapp's Landing, they're dedicating that center area, and there's gonna be a trail around there, that's how they're proposing to meet that part of that open space requirement. So. Moving on to Article 5. Oh, I'm sorry. Still under Article 4, we have the effective, 4.2 is effective periods of approval and amendments. All we're doing here is simply laying out a process for how, once you guys approve a preliminary plan, how long that approval lasts. And right now, the preliminary plan will last 4 years is what we have in there. At 4 years' time, the developer can come back and ask for an extension. That extension can be granted. What we would do at that time is look at to see if the layout, if all those things still meet the current city standards. Staff would look at that and decide whether that needs to come back to the boards or not. If there's enough changes in the standards at that time, then we might feel we need to come back to the council. But that lays out that procedural part for those approvals. It also lays out, if they want to make a change to their preliminary plan. Sometimes we get requests just for a minor lot change, and what this does is give some city staff some discretion to decide whether those are minor changes or not. If it's something significant enough where we feel needs to come back to the board, then that is what we call an amendment, and that would have to go back to kind of the same process of going through planning and zoning and back to the council, if we thought it was significant enough. Okay. 4.3 lists exemptions. This is still pretty similar to what you have today. We have what we call a minor plat in our current regulations. And the purpose of a minor plat is in these areas where it's maybe just a plat that comes in for 2 lots, maybe we're just changing some lot lines. We don't require them to go through the preliminary plan process. That is something that's been in the past administrative. What's changed a little bit is some of the requirements to meet a preliminary plan. The requirements today were pretty rigid as far as how those standards are, because right now it says if it's more than 3 lots, then it has to go through the preliminary plan process. Well, we basically took some of those requirements away, made it more discretionary for Teresa to look at and say, is this minor affecting, is this a minor impact? And to have that discretion to consider this a minor plat and approve it as a minor plat. Okay, right now, like I said, the one thing we get hung up on is if we get a plat that has 3 or 4 lots on it and they're just doing minor lot changes, well, that conflicts with what the regulation currently says. So we tried to get some of that language out of there so that if we felt it was minor affecting, we could move forward with it administratively. There's exemptions for cemetery grade plats, government use parcels. Those are completely exempt from the subdivision reg, because those are, and they always have been. Cemetery grade plots are end up being kind of a unique situation, and government use parcels usually are kind of in a similar situation. Going on to 4.4, subdivisions within unincorporated jurisdiction. This is that paragraph where I wanted to point out 4.4.2. That paragraph really gives you guys the sole discretion to approve or deny plats in the plating jurisdiction outside your city limits. And if you read that, basically, if you consider a plat to be premature or to conflict with the purpose of these regulations, or to conflict with the city's comprehensive plan, you have the ability to deny that plat. Okay. So any plat that comes through, and any plat that comes through that's outside the city limits in that area, the way the state laws are set up, Teresa doesn't have the authority to sign off on those as the authorized official. If you remember, you named her as authorized official to sign off on plats. Well, when you're in that area, that doesn't apply. So it has to be the council that signs off on those. So all those plats will inevitably come to you folks. And I think the P&Z also has to.
P&Z as a council.
Yeah. So that paragraph is kind of what you guys would be looking at as far as dealing with your comp plan and those things.
So that references back to those plats of those parcels of 40 acres or less and within 3 miles of our corporate limits.
Yeah.
Is that up in that 3?
Well, see now, if 40 acres or less is kind of a key item there, because if it's 40 acres or more, they don't have to plat.
Right.
And if they don't have to plat, then they don't have to come to you folks, but if it's under 40 acres, they have to plat.
This is what loops us in with the county and gives us a little bit of
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. If there is a plat that you feel you can approve that, you know, meets these conditions, that's where the annexation agreement then would come into play, where you'd have the ability to have them enter into an annexation. Okay, and that becomes important, you know, as you grow into these areas where you have these subdivisions occurring, to me, you want that ability to be able to have them annex in at that time when you become contiguous. And you can't have them annex in until you are contiguous, that's kind of the ticket there, so. Okay. Article 5 is just the definitions throughout. And then Appendix A is what you guys didn't have in your packet initially. And that was my mistake. I just sent that to Teresa and she updated your packet, it sounds like. But that is the agreement that would, in the event that you have a plat come forward where the improvements aren't in place, they would enter into this construction agreement with you. And it basically spells out, you know, all their responsibilities as far as, you know, constructing it in a certain amount of time, providing security, so they have to provide bonds for the work. And this document here really is what kind of started from Sioux Falls. Over the last 5-6 years, I'd say they've transitioned to this document and having their developers provide security and those types of things, because they ended up in some situations where they had some developments that went bankrupt halfway through, and then they kind of inherited them that way. So it's really to hopefully get a third party involved so that there's someone there to pick things up and finish those areas out. That's really the reasoning for why they kind of went in this direction, and so we feel it's a good practice to implement as well. It also lays out like I said, time period for construction, the authorities of inspections. Let's see. Just pick out the main things. Conformity to plans and specs, so it basically attaches their construction plans to this document so that we all know what they're constructing out there. Warranty, it lays out all the warranty responsibilities they have. Basically, any improvements they do out there have a 1-year warranty on their work. Has a paragraph in there regarding just the asphalt lift, making sure that we have 1 year between the bottom lift and the top lift. There's actually a specific paragraph regarding that. Maintenance, in these areas where they put down a bottom lift, and now the city's gonna be maintaining that while there's only a bottom lift, and just plowing snow on it and whatnot, cleaning the streets. There's some language in there, in regards to all their improvements, they're still responsible for these improvements until they're turned over to the city. Okay, so that goes through the sewer lines or water lines and everything, so until we accept them, they're ultimately responsible for the maintenance. We've actually written this in a way that if they want the city to plow the snow, clean the streets, that they would enter into a separate agreement, and I believe we're working on getting a generic one of those put together. So it's not necessarily tied into this document. So if there's a breach in this document, we want the ability to have that maintenance stuff in another agreement, so we could terminate, or if there's an issue with us maintaining those improvements and we want to terminate that agreement, we don't end up terminating the whole subdivision agreement. Okay? So that's kind of, I don't know if there's any questions on subdivision construction agreement. That's kind of subdivisions in a nutshell. The design standards are the engineering documents for when their engineers are laying out the subdivisions and how to lay out water mains, sewer mains. There's chapters on roadway design, storm sewer, standard locations, the easements. And then it also has a chapter on their submittals, basically tells them what their submittals have to look like.
Just to be clear to the council, this ordinance is for first reading to pass the subdivision regulations, so what Mitch just went over. But the design standards and the technical standards, we won't have actually approval of that until your next meeting, till second reading of this, and this actually gets approved, because we can't approve them ahead of the subdivision regulations, so just let you know that.
Jessica, could you provide Mitch a new picture of Hartford?
I think it's funny you mentioned that because I saw that today, and staff have received comments from the Economic Development Office about that picture. So let's
Yeah.
make sure that's on the record.
We'll get it switched out.
Sounds good.
Is, anybody from P and Z have comment, anything like that on this? That's okay. Yep. Any questions for Mitch? In a nutshell, it puts a lot of these things up on the front end, puts that agreement in place ahead of
Yeah.
time with the contractor, and protects us from some of the things we've had happen before too.
So Teresa, if I understand you correctly, I seen your notes here, that these documents are for your reference for now, so we do not need approval on the first reading?
No, we do.
Okay. so-
That note was in there for what I just said, the design standards and
Yeah.
technical standards. We
Okay.
won't approve those now, those are
Okay.
just for reference. But, cause, we have to go through first and second reading
I
of the
understand.
subdivision regulations. So we need to go through first reading, and then at the next meeting, we'll go through second reading. If it gets approved for second reading, the next agenda item is gonna be to look at the design and technical standards.
Make a motion to approve first reading of ordinance 653.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Ordinance 653, discussion? Hearing none. Nelson?
Yes.
Horn?
Yep.
Keel?
Yes.
Brenneman?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
And Monahan? All right, thank you. Thanks, Mitch.
Yep.
And now we'll move back down to reports and.
You're back.
Again, we got, city engineer report.
I'm gonna let Ross visit a little bit, just give my voice a break. He can give you an update on Nicholson Road. You first.
Thanks, Mitch. So last week, the contract documents for the Nicholson Road project were all signed, and the city issued a notice to proceed. On April 26th, we had a pre-construction meeting with the contractor and subcontractors, as well as some of the private utilities involved in the project, just to kind of discuss who to contact when, and go over the schedule, make sure everybody's on the same page, and then make sure the contractor's aware of everything they need to be keeping track of and submitting to us. And then the DNR had a few people present at that meeting to go over some of the requirements for the SRF funding. We need this, or the contractor will be required to submit payroll documents, and they'll have to sign off on all the change orders and pay applications. So that was that last week. We started construction yesterday. So far what they've done is took down all the permanent signage, set up the temporary signage. They cleared out some of the ditches of any brushes and shrubs and small trees. And they began to strip topsoil off of the south ditch of Nicholson, between kind of Patrick and Shamrock, give or take. And the other thing they did was installed some silt fence and erosion control protective devices, particularly along the creek down at the low end. That's pretty much all we've done so far. We'll continue to be working on the grading out there for the next couple weeks, and probably some more erosion control things, but that should be the bulk of the work for the foreseeable future.
Hey Ross, I would assume that I see the road is about 3/4 blocked
Yep,
right now at Patrick. I would assume there's gonna be construction vehicles all the time for a while. But once they get to really grading down that end, I'm assuming that's gonna be blocked.
we'll probably have to leave the barricades partially open, just to allow their construction equipment. Typically what we do is we'll like pull the first one up, a little further and then set the two side ones back a little further so that construction traffic can kind of get around.
Okay.
But the general public sees the three in a row and they kind of think to themselves, okay, well, this is closed and I can't get through. But being is that's really the only path in for the contractors, since
Right.
they can't come off of Highway 38, with their heavy equipment and cross that bridge. That's kind of their only way in and out for now.
I was just curious, because I seen a car or two, let's just say.
You do have two homeowners too that live on that.
Right.
Yeah.
And until we get the temporary, then, yeah.
And for the temporary access, one of the things we've discussed is the contractor doesn't plan on disturbing a lot of the east portion of Mickelson Road, kind of between South Colton Road and Highway 38. They're gonna leave that undisturbed for a while anyway, so that those few residents that live within the project area can get in and out that way. So then, once they really get going with grading on the west portion, and, you know, that'll pretty much be closed, but, so those residents still can get out to the east.
Right.
Stockwells are also gonna give us, maybe every couple weeks, updates that we can put out on our website for the general public, so, you know, they can keep abreast of what's going on, what's open, what's closed, and, you know, we can get that information out to the public as well.
Yes, and I have the first bulletin already prepared to kind of just an introductory bulletin, letting people know who to contact if they have questions about the project. I plan on emailing that to Teresa, and if you guys would like, I can email all of you that bulletin, so you get it every 2 weeks, probably on a Monday or Tuesday, with updates.
That'd be
Okay.
good.
And my contact information is gonna be on there, and if anybody else that you know of wants to get those, have them send me an email, or you guys can just email me, with their contact information, and I'll add them to the list.
That's good, I think that'll be important to keep people informed as much as possible.
Right now, we'll have all city staff, you folks, and then property owners along the project is kind of what our list is right
Sure.
now.
Sounds good, thanks Ross.
Okay.
Alright, go right ahead.
Okay, I'll just hit on the other projects here, wastewater treatment facility, we're just getting started on that, we're putting some exhibits together, doing some research on the property owners there, trying to collect some contact information. I know John's kind of been working on that, and he's actually reached out to Zacharias, or even just touched base with him a little bit. But we're trying to chase down, Anderson is the property next to east of Zacharias, we're trying to find a contact for.
Mr. Anderson, you wanna share some
I was
information?
gonna say, we haven't pressed it.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, there's your man right there.
I can speak to you after the meeting.
I gotta leave early, so.
He's out of here.
Okay, but like I said, we're just getting started with that work, so. Vandermark Avenue, we are gonna have our plans done this week. We're gonna sit down with Craig and Teresa, I gotta schedule a time to come out here and visit with you guys and show you the plans. But we'll have those, ready this week, and so pending any changes that we might have after that meeting, we should have things ready to bid out the week after, I guess, by next week. Swanson Park, that is bidding next week, so we've just been answering questions from contractors, and we've got some good interest out there on that project. Had quite a bit of interest on it, so I think we'll get some good numbers there.
Define good interest, more than normal, why is that particular
Well-
project attractive?
Like, sometimes you get into some projects, and if the phone's not ringing, and people aren't asking questions, and you wonder if anybody's looking at it.
Right?
You know, we've had that situation, you get to a bid and nobody submits a bid, or you get one bid, but here we'll get a number of bids based off the feedback we get and the questions being asked.
What do you attribute that to?
It's a good project,
Okay.
and contractors are hungry.
Okay.
So, and this is a good project that'll fit it later into their schedule, because right now we have a completion, it's a fall completion date, so
Right.
it's something that they can, it's a good filler job for them, It's out in the middle of nowhere, so it's pretty appealing to a lot of the dirt contractors out there.
All right, thank you.
Mike Franklin Trail, Soakup is the general on that project as well, and we talked to him about getting that work done while he's out here on Mickelson, and so they thought that as soon as things dry up here, it needs to dry up just a little bit more before they can get on that grade out there. But they were really hoping that they could get to that this week or next week. It's probably gonna be next week, just the way things are drying out right now. So hopefully we see that getting wrapped up here in the next couple weeks.
A couple of quick questions for you in regards to that. I mean, so there's obviously been some deterioration
Some
there.
scour.
Yeah, and so, is that part of the punch list?
Yeah, it wasn't last year because we hadn't seen that scour
Right,
yet,
right.
but now that'll go on there and they'll get those areas addressed.
Okay, cool.
On the force account side, been doing some reviews for Knapp's Landing. Sports complex industrial park planning, that was kind of a couple weeks ago that we were in those meetings. City maps, I don't think we've been doing much with those recently, but South Street exhibits, South Main Edition inspection. South Main Edition, we had a punch list last year about them having to replace some curb and gutter that was out there, and I see that they've gotten to that. So we're kind of keeping tabs on that as well. Crestwood Edition, we're working with a contractor out there and a developer to get that, they've got some silt coming off of that property and getting that contained and staying on their property. So they came out there once and put in some erosion control that we asked them to do. Well, it's still not quite what it needs to be, so they're coming out again to address that again. That's what I got.
Any other questions from Mitch? Thank you. Okay.
I'll just hit on a few things too. Not the newest slurry seal. Magwater, I'm actually gonna probably end up jumping that ahead, like more to the middle of May. Just for the fact that with the Mickelson Road project getting started as soon as it did, the traffic's gonna start bumping up on Railroad. So I wanna make sure we keep the dust under control. So I'm gonna be talking to Jim and we'll try getting that in about the middle of May for it. Wait for it gets too bad anyway, so.
You kinda worked that over today, Railroad.
I tried to get them all a little bit, so it was kind of a busy day today, kind of hectic. Yeah, gravel roads, like I said, I've been trying to hit them as I can. Got that nice little rain last night, that softened them up enough where I could touch them. Toward the end of the day, they were getting hard where I could already touch them again. But got railroad today and 9th and Vandemark got them cleaned up today, so. Sweeping, just finally got a chance to get out and start doing some sweeping. So we'll be on that for the next 2 or 3 days, getting the whole town done. Boulevard trees, Mike's got about 13 trees, I think, left. He's hoping to get them done Wednesday and Thursday if everything works out. Otherwise, he'll have them done for sure by the weekend. He's been going around and changing warranty trees at the same time and getting those taken care of. We did get the 3rd grade class tree planted for 3rd graders on Friday, so that went well. Mitch talked about Crestman Edition. I haven't heard anything as far as walk through in the Colton Road. I'm assuming that'll be coming up within a week or so. I-90 interchange, I had a meeting today with DOT and not on that I-90 interchange. It's actually, they're getting a lot of the studies and that stuff going right away. They're gonna do traffic counts here. They are hoping by the first part of June to come to the council and kind of explain what the process is and how it's going, and what their kind of some plans are, what they're talking about doing. And then they're going to have it, they're gonna have something available for Jamboree Days, kind of information thing on that. And then they're going to have some information nights later in the month for the stakeholders that are in the area, and then also open for the public meetings, so. that'll all be coming up here within the next couple months here, they'll be working on that. Some of their plans are, it's gonna be a mess around here. In 2023, they're gonna be doing the westbound lane on Frontier for about 4 miles. 2024, they're gonna be doing the eastbound lane. And 2025, they're scheduled to do the bridge, so we're gonna have 3 years of road construction out here in the interstate. So we might have to see if we can't get some of that pushed together a little bit, cause it's gonna, people are not gonna be happy with that much tearing up, or that 3 years of construction out there, so. So that's kind of where they're at. Along with that, we're gonna be doing some, we'll be putting our traffic counters out now that we know where, kind of where they want them at. And we're gonna have a group from Minneapolis come in too and do a study. They want the county to do some stuff, us to do some stuff, and then that group from Minneapolis. So they'll try to get as much information as possible. So we can get it designed right and proper. We'll be getting a speed trailer out too here this week and get that out. Probably some of the first place we'll put it was, it's on Railroad. I did talk to Tyrone today. Now that Mickelson's been shut down, high school kids been flying down that road, so I talked about that, just to kind of get that under control before we get too many complaints about it. Water, we thought we had a leak up on Western Avenue, or up in Western Meadows Edition. It seems to be just groundwater. It's dried up now, it's quit. As soon as they dug out one basement, they got a bunch of water off from that, and ever since then it's been dry, so just assume it's all groundwater there. Lift station, everything's been working good there. Lagoons, we are discharging. We are gonna make our daily limits. Our 30-day average is gonna be tight. I've already called DNR and talked to Kelly Busher and said hopefully ammonia will come down and we'll make our limits and not have to worry about anything, but if not, we are super full out there, so we have no choice but to discharge.
Number 3 looks like it's ready to go over the top, man.
Number 1, yeah.
Or
Yeah,
number
I'm
1.
gonna be bringing that over tomorrow into number 2, so. So I think we'll be okay, but like I said, I might have to send a little letter to them, just explain about the 30-day average, so. Parks, we're moving strong with them, getting them cleaned up, ready to go. Bathrooms have been opened up, the new ones anyway, and said the skate park, they got that opened up, whether we keep it or not, it's hard to say. Sports complex, we were talking about trying to start that water main out there today, but with the gravel roads the way they were and just sweep and everything like that, we put it on hold until tomorrow. Me and Neil are gonna get up there and try to start getting some of that put in. Electrical, I did talk to Travis, and I also talked to Brian of Sioux Valley Electric and Mitch a little bit about that, and we are gonna go with 3-phase out there. We just gotta wait to get it staked and find out for getting the pad poured and everything like that. It's gonna take a little bit to get it all together. Did you forget to write that down?
Yeah.
And so we'll be moving along with that too, and trying to get all wrapped up here before long too on that. Fields, dragging them, trying to get them in shape. They're been hit pretty heavily lately. And we will be marking out the soccer fields, getting them squared up this week and getting them painted. Pool, they did get it acid washed the other day and they got it painted. There are some tiles that came loose that have been put in. Neil's doing some fence work down there, otherwise we should be ready to fill the pool next week and start getting chemicals balanced and getting the heaters going and stuff like that. So that should be ready to go. And I interviewed a part-time person today, so. That's what I've got, my report. If anybody's got anything for me or any questions?
Speaking of fence work, okay, you know where I'm going.
Ball fields.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's all right.
We checked on insurance, they're not gonna cover it.
No insurance.
No, they're not gonna cover it, so I'm gonna have to get some prices from a couple different fence companies, see what it's gonna cost us.
So Teresa, I mean, somewhere down the line, okay, first off, I wanted to go look at it, I didn't. Are the fields usable at this point?
Yes, they are.
Okay, okay. I guess we
Can you give an update, what are you asking about there?
When we had
The
the,
backstops on the fence, they had damage through the winter, and they started to lean in.
yep, with that wind and that heavy
It
snow.
was with that big
It's
ice,
60 mil,
snow,
yeah.
and that wind,
Okay.
Bent the poles, 4-inch posts that were for
the
the
smaller
backstop.
poles.
Yeah.
So,
So when you get quotes, Craig, are you gonna ask about 4-inch poles again, or are we gonna look at 6-inch poles?
I don't know if the 6-inch, they probably would've held up to it. I'll talk to Mitch a little more about that and see what he kind of recommends to on that.
We had, I know Harmon on Park had the same thing 2 years back, they had some poles bent from the wind out there, and I know they made some repairs to there. I can research that a little bit.
It's amazing.
I had one thing quick, and maybe I can just catch you afterwards too. I talked to Teresa, she might have talked to you about, there was a homeowner on Shamrock
Yep.
South, yep. Wondering about grass in there, so.
Yeah, we went up there and looked at it today, and what it is, what it looks like is when they built their houses up in there, the contractors went up there and cut some of that back to make drainage through there and stuff.
Sure.
And they got down to the clay, so there's no black dirt on it. So once it dries up enough, because we're gonna have to go through Jardine's property to get to this area.
Yep.
So I gotta talk to him, and once it dries up enough, then we'll come in there and shake it a little bit and get some black dirt and stuff on it, so.
Okay.
Right now, it doesn't appear to have anything silting off of that onto the neighbor's property by the, where the property pins are at, but they mow past that, so it's right on the edge where they're, and where they're stopped and they're mowing and stuff like that. So we'll have to go in there and shape it, but we're gonna have to wait for it to dry up before we get it in here, so.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Any overage on, dirt, any extra dirt, is there any agreement to get some, of that maybe hauled into some locations around town, from Mickelson to different spots, or?
Mickelson, I believe, is pretty much a washer. They're gonna actually have to get dirt for that one.
Well, yeah, they're borrowing it, they've got that lined up already, they're borrowing it from Hassan, I think.
On the sports complex, me and Mitch have talked about that, there is some overage on that. We're gonna put it in there where, I believe you're putting in, there's a,
Yeah, we did an
change
ad,
order, not change order. but
ad alternate. We did an ad alternate, because we're gonna have leftover soil from the sports complex. We did an ad alternate for the contractor to haul that down to the South Street area and fill that area in, so that you guys can see what that cost would be, and you can decide whether you wanna have that as part of the project or not. Yeah.
You still need some fill in the vicinity of where the proposed, field house or the shed is out there?
Yep, that's another option that we're talking about too. so.
That's part of that project, it's not part of the ad alternate, but it's something that could work out.
We don't, yeah, at this time, I think it's gonna be one of those, we're gonna have to stockpile it and bring it out there, because we'll probably put it like on the 5 acres or something like that, and then once it dries up, get in there. Like we were talking, the contractor, more likely, everything will be earth movers, and then you can have room to turn in there and get it laid out, so. So that'll be, some of the dirt will be going in there too, so, but it'll just be a different way of going.
Sounds good.
Any other questions for Craig? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Alright, and we'll have a finance officer report, with Teresa.
Okay, just to give you a quick update, we are advertising for that position, taking applications till May 11th on that. So in the meantime, I've been doing those duties, mainly been working this last week or so. Employment papers with part-time people have been coming in, so going through all of that. Did your guys' payroll today, your pay stubs are on your desk, should be in your account tomorrow. If they're not, let me know, so make sure nothing got screwed up in the process. Give you a listing of the usual revenues that came in last month and just kind of where we're sitting for cash balances and the revenue and expenses as far as last month and year to date. Malt beverage renewals too, all the applications have come in for those renewals. Their date is in June, so at your next meeting, they will come before you guys to renew those licenses that are currently out there. Summer help, right now all we have is just one of our public works assistants working, but we'll get the other ones going once they get out of school and then they can start helping with that as well. And then, of course, we have Ron Gates working as our dump site monitor over there. He started when that opened up, and talked to him, so far, so good. He hasn't had really any conflicts or any troubles with anybody, so, that's going well so far. And then listed a calendar of events as always. Okay, any questions?
I don't, the only item you had on there is we should, designate you as the interim finance officer.
Yeah, so if no questions, in the meantime, until we get a permanent finance officer in place, if I can get designated as the interim finance officer, then sign all documents necessary.
Make a motion to designate Teresa Seidel as interim finance officer.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Teresa. New city administrator report.
Okay, now my report, just give you an update, with the Hugo land up there in North Vandermark, Stockwell did give me the exhibits needed for the easements, and so those were sent off to him last week. I asked him if he could look them over and if I could hear back with him in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully we'll get those signed and, we'll have those in place. He did actually even call me last week. I told him that documents would be coming, and he wanted some more information as far as with the right of way, if we did assess it, how much that would be, have we sold any other land or whatever. So he is definitely thinking about what he wants to offer or what he would like an offer from the city to be for the right of way. So we'll have more talks about that too. Did give you a quick just hiring update on the part-time positions we have. Assistant pool manager, we had one open spot for that because we usually hire two and we only had one, and we were just going to use some lifeguards to fill in. But we had an applicant come through, Luke Flex, so we did hire him. So now we got that position filled. Lifeguards, we have 6. We usually kind of like to hire 7, and we had one applicant come through, which I'm going to interview this week. So maybe hopefully we'll have all those positions filled as well. Public Works, we had them all filled, but then one backed out, and as Craig mentioned, we did have another applicant come through, so he interviewed them, so, we'll review that and hopefully get that position filled soon as well. And then I already updated you about Ron, okay, so I think we're gonna be all set for summer, hopefully get all the positions filled up here. I guess I want to go down to, I put on your desk there a process about how to do improvements as far as streets and water and sewer and utilities. I didn't have a chance last week, it was just crazy in here, but so to type it up ahead of time for the meeting, but I have it typed up now. You guys can review it. Let me know if you have any questions. It's basically just kind of a short summary of the different ways you can put in streets. So review it, call me if you have any questions, or we can discuss further at a later meeting and whatnot, because I know you haven't had a chance to look at it. So let me know if you have any questions on that. Employee manual update, that committee's been meeting. We've done a final review of it. Talked it over with staff. We had a staff meeting on Monday to make sure they're all okay with what we're proposing. I think I'm gonna shoot it out to the committee, a final one, just email out to you guys, make sure you're comfortable with everything we discussed, and then we'll bring it to city council. We'll shoot it out to them, and have you guys look at it. And Ross kind of gave you an update on the Mickelson Road, but just kind of on our side of it, the paperwork side of what, everything with easements, deeds, everything has been filed. Like I said, we've had the pre-construction meeting, we are going strong on it finally, so.
Good job.
Any questions?
Arden's happy.
Just wait. No, it's fine.
You'll find
We're not through construction
You'll
yet.
find
When Ross was talking about his contact information, I've already talked with him 3 times, I think. So,
How many houses are down in that end of town? Roughly? They're all.
Along Mickelson?
they're all happy.
Oh,
They're all, they are. I don't know how many times I've heard it.
Yeah.
Ribbon cutting,
Groundbreaking,
groundbreaking, or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
11 a.m. Your house.
What's the date on that?
this Friday.
May 4th.
This Friday, 11
Corner
o'clock.
of Hartford and Nicholson Road.
Yeah. We'll see. Yeah, we probably are.
All right, any questions for Teresa?
Teresa, where are we at with the gentleman on the south end of town that's got a fence on city property?
I think he wants to put an offer together to bring to you. I talked to him about 2 weeks ago, and I said, well, you have to bring something to submit to the council, so I'm assuming he'll come to a city council meeting coming up here shortly.
How
Now,
long
the
are
weather
we gonna
straightened
wait
out.
in the event that he doesn't?
I told him, you know, when the weather straightens out, you either have to move it or you have to secure the right, so, you know, and that's what I told him 2 weeks ago when I talked to him, so I think we will probably have him at our next meeting, this one.
And as far as the employee manual, when are we gonna address Jesse's concern?
I talked to him about that, and I'll shoot that on the email. We kind of talked, I think we can do some wording change to make it cover the city and to cover Jesse's
Okay, is that
position.
gonna be in what you email out? or-
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, and if the committee's good with it, then that's what we'll present to the council. So,
With that employee manual, how's the discussion regarding a park and rec director going with that group, or isn't it going?
well, it's been probably 3 weeks. How was the last time we met with Matt?
3 weeks.
At least probably 3 weeks since we've met with Matt, and so we need to set up another meeting with him. I kinda etched together a little bit of how it was left last time is I tried to put a proposed job description together and then bring it before him again and we kinda discuss it, and so, you know, we haven't met with him yet to get his input on it, so hopefully when he gets some free time and we do, we can, yeah, keep moving forward on that.
Did you, change the, username and password on the website?
You mean for your computer?
No, for the city website.
For the city
the
website?
city-
Yes,
who's
I
actually-
changed the password, yes.
You did?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So I have, it was more for the previous report, I should have asked that, but
Nope, that's good. And we do have all our bank signature cards all changed.
thank you.
All right, any other questions for Teresa?
Good questions.
We'll move to old business. First item up on old business is new facility for Siouxland Libraries. This was a discussion at our last council meeting. We talked about the pros and cons and kind of the whole concept of that proposal. So, don't believe anything has changed. I'll look at Teresa and see anybody in the room. I don't think anything has changed as far as that proposal goes from the last time we talked. So I don't, unless the council has specific questions, I don't know that we need to run through the entire proposal again. But I'll throw that out there. Are there questions, clarifications, things like that? After we get through that phase of it, if anybody from the proponent side that wants to see that happen, wants to speak, we'll give them a little bit of time. If anybody is opposed to it, I'll give them a little bit of time to speak as well. So, first of all, just on general overview. Anything changed and any specific questions from the council on what that proposal was?
I was curious what the actual size of the library would be.
18 by 24.
24.
And what do we approximately use at the library now? What space does the Siouxland use?
We're in the shared space and the current space is about,
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Sorry.
Deaf guy.
yeah, no problem. I'm Jody Fick with Siouxland Libraries. We share a space with the school that I believe is just around 1,100 square feet. So this would be around 432 square feet, I think, those dimensions. I'm probably a little low on the school one, closer to 1,500 square feet.
At the school, 1,500, we're going to 432. Is that a concern?
I think that because we rotate our collections in and out, that we'll be able to keep the collection fresh enough for the community. And they are planning to, the senior center is planning to let us use some of the space outside of the library area for programming. So we should be good.
I'm sorry, what's programming?
Story times, when we have authors come, when we do any programs for the public to come when we need a gathering space like this.
I've got a TV station, programming is totally
Yeah,
different
it's,
thing. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
Has my fellow council members had any citizens talking with them about this?
Yes,
No one from my ward.
And what has been the comments, if I could ask? Is that a fair question to ask?
yes, I'll expand, I didn't have a chance to address, one proponent, unfortunately, but, to my understanding, it was addressed and resolved. Otherwise, it's been, can I be abrupt? You better get it done or you're in trouble.
Meaning they wanted to have,
Absolutely.
I've
Very
been
similar
contacted by two,
Yeah.
one proponent, one opponent.
yep,
Proponent was, really just, we like the idea of being able to get more hours, we like the idea of having it, just having it more accessible that way. The opponent was, concerned about parking, doesn't disagree that maybe there needs to be a different space, but not sure that that's the right space for it, is how that was.
I've had 3 contact me. I hear the words that we're taking a step backwards. That's the exact words I've heard. I wonder what the feelings are. Is that, am I crazy to say? I mean, that's what people are asking me. So, who wants to say that we're not? Tell me that we're not.
What,
And if you do, yep, we'll have to come up. Yep.
what you would be gaining is additional hours during the school day. So I think that is an important thing for all of the citizens to have. So you would pick that up. Eventually, I do think that that space would be too small for the library, but I think to get the gain of those hours that people have lost out on, I think it's worth it.
Is there a way that you could kind of do an audit for us, to give us an idea, once, if this does happen? Because that obviously would be very futuristic down the line, an idea, what type of use we're getting here, and do you normally do that?
Yes, and I can also give you some for communities of this size and where you would expect to be, what more the ideal size of a library would be. There are a number of things that we could go through on that, but I think the advantage of starting from this and seeing where people are at would be worth the while for very little investment.
Okay.
The people that the people that I've spoken with, kind of made this clear that we're not necessarily taking a step backwards, because we're maybe getting a little smaller area, but we have a library that's open, versus having one that's partially open. So we have programs available constantly. So that's what's been relayed to me by my constituents and beyond. We even have people outside of the community call me as well. The only person that has spoke the other way to me about it was at the last council meeting. So that's it. So.
I misspoke, one person was in my ward, the other one was not, and one person was from outside of town. Two, one in favor, one against. One seemed to change their mind from against to in favor, so. Sure.
If the argument is the facility versus the hours, if you look at the grand scheme of things, I doubt, like she said, I'm sure when the city's in a better position, the option's always there to move the library again. But it seems like all the opponents are talking about the facility. And in my mind, concerned about the short hours at the school and your only concern is the facility, then getting your car to drive Sioux Falls. It is my opinion.
Now, I guess, if you're done, Mark, I don't wanna cut you off if you're not. Jesse and Teresa, I just wanna make sure we're clear too, if we're moving forward on anything tonight, agreements haven't been finalized and all of those kinds of things, so you would be looking for a motion from the council to move forward in this direction, is that correct?
Yeah, basically, because if you do want to move forward, we would want to then work on, I put some draft agreements in, but we want to get those, fully, gone through to get them in, a state that we can bring before you for approval, one between us and Siouxland and one between us and the senior center. So we'd have to work on those drafts and bring a final draft to you guys for approval before anything can go forward. Siouxland Libraries Board have got to agree to this as well, and they've got a meeting this week. Plus we need to get some more concrete cost estimates to bring before you guys, so you know what dollar amount we're looking at and how much the city is going to need to pay for this facility. So there's a few more steps in the process before it's finally done, but we're just looking for, if the council wants to go down this road, to have us continue on. And
More discussion of the council, otherwise we'll ask for proponents, no opponents.
I would like one question, what's gonna be the proposed hours at the senior center? I don't see it
I think it's still up for discussion.
Yeah, we haven't finalized any of those yet, until we have that commitment to.
here. What's been the brainstorming? We've had the discussion, that was
I've looked at what.
This is Alicia Boyce.
Oh, sorry, Alicia Boyce, I'm the Rural West Branch Librarian, so I would be overseeing this location. Currently, we are at 12 hours a week. We'd be looking at, doing probably at least 20 hours a week, and we would be doing, both evening and afternoon hours is what I'm currently looking at right now. I haven't completely taken off the table some morning hours. We do plan on doing story time on Thursday mornings for the public. Our branch would be closed to the public, but our families would be coming in during that time and being able to check out and utilize the library for, say like a half hour after story time's over, and they can read with their kids, check out materials, and then leave. So there would be some morning options for sure for those story time families.
And part of the process of setting the hours is talking with the community to find out what matches, what other activities are going on. If swimming lessons are going on, it's not a time when we typically will get kids to come into the library, so we'll try to balance out versus what some of the activities are to the best that we can.
Does that help?
They're working on their staffing, I think is what they're saying, so they're like.
I guess what I wanna know is is it not an option to work with the school and close the library off to the school for certain times during the day time?
We
I
can't
can't answer that for you.
Has that been talked about?
Mr.
Brendan,
I'm Samantha Bislow, the district librarian at West Central. Could you ask me that question again? So I
Has there been discussion of setting aside times at the school where we'll call it adult story time, where the school kids essentially wouldn't have access to the school library, but then we could set aside time for, instead of going here, people could go there at certain times.
Sure. Just so I understand, are you saying during the school day?
Yep.
I might even call on Officer Albers, just to back me up on this one. I know that we're just in the days where school security is really a concern. And we're also in the days where our library is really expanding. I can't believe the growth we've had in the 6 years I've been in the position. Some of you know that I taught for 14 years before that, and I've been a district librarian for 6. Our library is busy all the time. Honestly, Dan and my husband don't understand. I get home some nights and just put my feet up. It's a wonderful problem to have. I can't speak. I know that Mr. Behrens, our superintendent, has been a spokesperson for this school. I'm really here tonight just to support the committee. But I just can't see that being a feasible option, as far as shutting down to our kids when they're just banging the doors to get in there the way it is. Some of you might not know that we have the various classes come in throughout the day. For example, the physics students were just in, and they utilize our makerspace equipment. We have drones and we have all kinds of robots and fun stuff. And we incorporate that with the different books that we have too, so they come in and they do a hands-on learning with the book learning. So, like I said, we're booked for classes all the time. It sounds like a wonderful option, but at this point, I just think that we're just too, we're kind of bursting at the seams. So, thank you for asking. Did I clarify that well?
So is this, excuse me,
Yeah.
is this going to help you space-wise?
Again, I would say, I think Mr. Behrens was more of the spokesperson for the school. I'm kind of here just as a community member, 20-year resident, and having taught many of your students and stuff. But I will just give you an aside, it would help our school budget. We pay right now, it would be about $4,500 to renew our software. The software I'm looking at, if we did make this move, would be about $2,000 less. So it would help my overall bottom line. And I know some people have asked me that question, so I can share that with you. Are there any other questions you might have? Again, I believe Mr. Behrens has covered most of it. I'm just here to support tonight. And as a resident, I think it's wonderful for our community members. As I said, being in the school position for as many years as I've been in, people talk to me all the time and they say, oh, now I'm going to Sioux Falls for my library needs. I take my kids there. These are students I had many years ago. Now I take my kids and we go eat in Sioux Falls and we go shop in Sioux Falls. And as the wife of a former business owner, I don't like to see that. I like people spending their money here too. So again, I just think it's a win-win for everyone. I love libraries, obviously, and I love our schools. So thank you.
So since, I'm sorry, just one last question. Since you have a good feeling for the material in the library and what both sides,
Yeah.
you have a feel for that, do you think they're gonna have a problem going from 1,500 square feet roughly to around 450?
Well, that's a great question. We've had an excellent committee working on that, and I guess I'm just gonna trust the judgment of the ladies that have done the legwork on that.
Yep.
Yeah,
Just
great
curious.
question though.
So,
Yep. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
One community member, their concern was, the investment of city funds into the senior citizen center. And I just wanna make sure that everyone's aware, we currently give the senior citizens center $9,000 a year. And we currently give the West Central School District $3,400 a year for the Siouxland Library to operate there as well. So we're already spending, some money. And this is a one-time expenditure.
Yeah. So what we are giving Siouxland now at $3,400, that would go towards rent, so it'd be a wash with Siouxland. This one-time expenditure would be the upgrades, the bringing it up to code, and, we talked about the expense, about $9,000, whatever that number ends up being. That would be the one-time expense to get the senior center, to be able to, incorporate this facility, so.
Those are kind of like leaseholder improvements. If we, for some reason, didn't continue with the library there and had built a new facility and we wanted to continue leasing for some reason, I can't imagine maybe a coffee nook for the chamber, I don't know. But I can't imagine a good reason. But, those would still be ours. Those improvements are, just like you lease any space, you're gonna have to improve it yourself. Right?
Yeah, I would agree with that, yeah, absolutely. I guess the concern or the image we don't want to project is public financing in private spaces. But this is a very unique situation where it benefits the entire community.
Other council questions?
I think with that comment, Travis, I think I look at it more as a partnership instead of
I agree.
public funds in a private. I know that's ultimately what it is, but it's also a partnership, no different than other partnerships we enter into with.
And that's the takeaway that hopefully those citizens will laying out.
Alright. Do we have, any proponents that wish to say anything yet tonight? Not, do we have any opponents that wish to say anything tonight? Yep.
I'm Lois Kaiser, and I'm president of the senior center right now. And we're excited about this idea. If people come to the library, and hopefully if some of them will come over into our part of the building, and we're planning to let them use part of the facility for their time, and they say adult programs too, so I think it's gonna be a great thing. So I hope you'll let us do it.
Do senior
And
citizens like kids?
Most of us are grandparents.
I really asked that tongue in cheek. Because again, that was a concern, and I just, I thought, man, it seemed to be like a great fit, and I didn't really see it as a problem, so I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, I think it'd be a great program, yeah.
I think most keep them in line if they didn't.
But as far as I know, we're all ready for it. And I know there are gonna be some grants that we're gonna be trying to get to help pay for the upkeep or the remodeling, so.
You're not 501c3 certified, are you?
I'm supposed to be asking Joanne Miles that. I thought she said we were, but I don't know.
I think you guys asked if they are.
They are. Okay, cool. Well, that helps.
Yeah. Okay, okay.
Great.
Any other?
Thanks, Lois. Yep, anyone else? Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would say a couple comments on, I've been deep in. When I was in high school, I have a lunch library that interfere with my extracurricular activities. So I never been to a library, know what it is, but now that I'm old, I don't do those extra activities anymore. So I think going to the library would be a real treat. So I hope we do get a nice little library that we can use, so I hope you kind of support it a little bit.
Thank you.
Alright. Do we have any action from the council?
I would make a motion that we move forward with moving or entering into agreements to move the library to this, what do we call it, it's not the senior center anymore, it's called the.
Gage House.
Gage House.
Second.
Do you feel comfortable with the wording of the motion? Move
I
forward.
think to move forward with the library proposal,
Chris
at the
always makes
FH
that
house.
move.
Yeah.
He knows what I meant.
I think so, I got it.
Put it in your own, that's true.
Alright, we got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? I'll call the vote. Porter.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Keel.
Yes.
Berman.
Yes.
Klein.
Yeah.
Okay. Motion carries. Alright, thanks for being here tonight for that.
Thank
You sure stay for the rest, we got all kinds of riveting ideas.
Rats off the ship.
Signs on party, all right. There they go.
Alright, we'll move to, mostly to Craig, but discuss potential traffic issues along Partee Drive.
Okay, last meeting, I was asked to look into this a little bit more and see about some signage up in there. I did visit with Cliff Ryder from South Dakota LTAP, and we discussed it and kind of went over, I drew kind of a map up of what it's like and what the construction was that's going on up there, and we kind of figured something like, no through trucks or delivery trucks only, signage like that. We talked about the speed limit signs that flash, and he said they really don't do any good. And more signage really isn't gonna do any good as far as speed limit. He said people will drive the speeds that they feel comfortable driving. Biggest thing is to look at law enforcement for speed and stuff like that, and be strict with it, don't just give them warnings, stuff like that, make sure that they start to obey it. We can definitely put speed trailer up there, which will help people realize that they are going over the speed limit up in there, which will definitely do that. That'll probably be one of the first spots we put it, put on railroad first and up there. And then, talked to Mitch a little bit too about when we're doing the sewer line on Vandemark, we're talking about completely blocking that far, north end completely off. So basically, par T traffic will only be par T up in there at that time, because we could stop the people to the north, they can either go up to north end, otherwise we couldn't just go past their property and keep it just so that, they're, but we'll have that road completely blocked somewhere along it to keep that people from going through that way. There won't be any through traffic there. Once road gets open back up again, it'll be normal traffic through there, what typically is through there. Like I said, so I don't see a huge increase as far as traffic during the construction and as far as when they're doing their development, pretty much when development comes in, they bring their equipment in there and they're not in and out again, you got a few workers that come in and out. And if we talk to the developer and stuff like that and tell them, we gotta keep the trucks off this road, we can't, and that'll help, keep them on keep them on Vandemark, excuse me. So that's, one thing that we can definitely do to try to keep any, equipment off there. To block it completely with trucks, you've got garbage trucks, you're gonna have your delivery trucks, you're gonna have your cement trucks, different things, projects are going on in the homeowners' places up in there, so you can't completely stop it from trucks unless you don't enforce it. If you don't enforce it, then, why would you do the signage for it, so. So I guess when it came down to, like I said, I put in my recommendation, utilize the speed trailer, put the no through trucks up there, possibly a delivery trucks only sign, and have law enforcement, kind of stay up in there a little bit and do it. And I'm not sure if that's where you guys were at as far as what you wanted me to address on it. That's kind of what I came up.
What's the time frame again? How long is this gonna be? Are we looking at this being, we're looking at the whole time that the development is developing there, or is it?
I think it'll just be pretty much for when construction sewer line, and that's gonna probably take, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Yeah, it's not gonna be real long. It'll be 3 weeks or so, I guess.
Okay.
If we think even big picture, in best case scenario, we hope to address this again when Vandemark's being paved.
Yeah.
And I guess not to seem insensitive, but when people are passionate about something, they show up. And since we've got nobody from Part T here, again, I'm a little frustrated. So I don't care if we do anything at this point.
Hey Doug, this might be off subject just a little bit, but would it be possible when you do mobilization to have your equipment come in from the north? I mean, on the gravel, is that gravel road able to handle mobilization for earth moving?
Yeah. They'll trailer it in most of it,
Yeah. It might be just ticky-tacky here,
Well, I
but,
don't think they would come through Part T.
well, I hope they wouldn't come up, they wouldn't fit. But what I'm
I would
saying,
guess they'll come up Vandemark from the south with a.
And the city,
could you request?
City already has ordinance saying they couldn't drive a Part T there.
My point here is not party. It's going into the county, actually, township, and coming in from the north side off the gravel. I don't even know what the road that is. What is that?
Vandemark.
Well, extended Vandemark all the way to the oil to the north.
To the oil.
It is, okay.
Vandemark,
It's actually
it's Vandemark until it dead ends.
I think, Scott,
Really?
It is Vandemark.
I didn't know that.
say, Scott, I think what we need to understand with, like I said, with developments like that, they'll probably bring an earth remover or two in.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple excavators, backhoes, and that'll be about it. They're not constantly bringing equipment in and out all the time.
Okay.
our portion of railroad is a lot better than the township part, but, I mean, we can certainly, or Vandemark, we can certainly talk to the township and, you know, or not the township, but the developer and say, you know, is
It's
there?
pretty ugly north.
Yeah.
Is it?
It's not a very
I've
good
been down
road.
that road and it's,
Yeah.
and I've had some sippy holes in there
Worse.
before.
I just drove down it tonight, it would be worse.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, then never mind, scratch that. Okay.
I think the bottom line is, I mean, they wanna be, you guys wanna be good neighbors too. I mean, obviously not trying to make anybody on our team mad, so, I mean, I don't foresee that being an issue.
And like Craig said, they're gonna come in one time,
Right.
in and back out. Not like they're gonna be hauling things in and out every day.
Okay.
You know, if we really reflect back on that letter, the other concern was just general traffic. And again, we can only, you know, do speed enforcement, those same suggestions and recommendations that Craig has just brought forth. And there was a part of that, that talked about, depressions in the road to slow traffic down. And I think, you know, we've beat that horse several times, so I don't think that's an option.
You really need to watch how you speed bumps or depressions, because if you could wreck a car pretty quick, and then you'll end up with a lawsuit about that, so. There's specifications of all that stuff, so.
Alright, do we need anything to move forward on this? And if your recommendation here, do you want a motion for that, for your recommendation, or do you feel comfortable?
I'm comfortable enough, if you guys are okay with the recommendations, I'll just move ahead and we'll get some signs ordered for up there and get ready for, like I said, when that happens. And then me and Mitch have already been working on this other part of it, so. And the speed trailer, and that's just something we'll just keep up there off and on, so.
And my mind may have wandered and may have brought it up. Have we ever around town, has it been requested, have we looked into investing in, flashing like speed limit signs permanently around it?
The flashing, like what you see on the stop signs, that stuff, that flash and different ones in town. When I was talking to Cliff, he said they really don't do any good. He said they were good for the first week or two, then people are used to seeing them, and they ignore them. So he said, basically, you're just putting up another speed limit sign, so. And Cliff, he goes all over the state. I mean, he's been in with, DOT and, stuff like that for years, so counties, so.
You comfortable with the recommendations, Craig?
Alright, nothing else, we'll move forward. Next item on the agenda is the Mickelson Road project. Thanks for your work on that, Craig, by the way. Mickelson Road project, Teresa's got some numbers for us for that additional road set.
So as we've talked in the past, you know, I've given you some funding scenarios. We are going to pay for this project with, you know, money out of our reserves. We do have our SRF funding. We have some direct assessments coming with that. And then we have some money in escrow. Initially, we thought we'd need about another $1 million going off engineer cost estimates to help supplement. Luckily, the bids came in low, so we only need about $650,000 in order to bridge the gap, you know, that we're looking at. I've talked with rural development, as you know, we've been kind of working with them. They do fund projects like this. We submitted our application back to them way back in last fall and found out about a month ago they won't fund anything in the wetlands, which is okay. We still have enough soft costs or costs outside that we can go with the rural development funding. So basically, I've asked Great Western and Relia Bank to give me some funding scenarios. Like the US Bank never got back to me, but as far as what they would do as far as terms, if we would do just a direct loan through them, you know, just the city and them, or what they would do in terms if we do one with them and rural development being the guarantor of the loan. So I kind of put those proposals in your packet to look at what they've quoted me. Basically, Relia Bank, whether we do with a rural development guaranteed loan or a direct loan with them, they will do a loan for 20 years. They'll go out that far, which will help reduce our, you know, annual payments, either 20 or 25, basically. Of course, the interest rate's a little bit lower with a, you know, a 20-year loan. So I put those scenarios out there. If we do just a direct loan through them, the interest rate between them and doing a rural development loan is about 0.15% difference, whether you do a 20 or 25, so it's not a huge interest rate difference. Relia Bank, their origination fees, or their upfront fees, will only be about $2,500. With rural development, you're gonna have about $6,500. So with rural development, just comparing Relia banks, with rural development, you're gonna have more origination fees with Relia Bank, but you're gonna get a little bit lesser, interest rate. The other thing with rural development though is that there's gonna be a lot more paperwork too on that side and a lot more regulation. So I've worked with rural development before, fire department's gone through it, it's kind of a process. There's a lot to keep track of and a lot to, do with it. So I don't know if that 0.15% is worth doing the rural development or not in my eyes. I'm just giving you my opinion. Great Western too also gave us funding scenario. I double checked their quote and their numbers. They will only go out 10 years, the most with this. And they're proposing either a direct loan through them, which would essentially be a general obligation bond. So there will be a lot of upfront fees with that because you'll have to go through bond counsel. So we're looking at, you could have as much as $6,000 to $8,000 in fees with doing that. If they go through rural development, once again, they'll want to go out 10 years with that, but the origination fees will only be that $6,500. So rural development fees are only $6,500, and if you go that route. Great Western, their interest rate structure is a little bit different. Relia Bank was always just a fixed amount, as you've seen on there. Great Western, for the first 5 years, it's going to be, they have a floor interest rate plus a variable one. Basically, they go off of whatever the CMT is at the time, which is kind of the way I understand it, maybe Jeremy knows more, but it's kind of the Federal Reserve's current interest rate going off of what the stock market or the bond is doing that day. So that plus, a certain percentage, they add that into it, but there's also that minimum floor interest rate that we'd be paying. They do that for the first 5 years, and then they reevaluate it another 5 years and go off the interest rate at that time. So we're kind of taking a risk of what interest rates will do in 5 years, I guess, at that point.
I'm gonna make a motion that we go with Relia Bank, 20 years, for the additional funding, $650,000.
Second.
And you're talking the direct loan with them?
Direct loan, 20 years.
Perfect. And the second was from?
That's what
Travis.
when I looked through, yeah, Travis had that. If we're discussing that for a minute, the small difference in interest rate is small compared to the hoops you gotta jump through and things that could get delayed and $1,000, $1,200, $2,000 projects you have to do to make sure you comply.
Yeah.
It's.
I think that's the best option.
This in a bar graph instead of a synopsis would have really, would be very easy to see.
Right.
Okay,
if I could put it
Big bar graphs.
It's kind of hard to do with the variable ones because you don't really know.
Absolutely.
That's subjective because I see it better like this.
Teresa was gonna do both options, but she just was too busy this last week to get it in.
Now that you say that, Travis, instead of 248 pages, if we would have bar graph, we might only have like 246.
Yeah. A lot of info, but.
Wow. All right, we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion on that? Hearing none? Call vote. Brennan?
Yes.
Keel?
Yes.
Horn?
Yep.
Jones?
Yes.
Monahan?
Yeah.
And Nelson?
Yes.
Okay. I think that was a
Good move.
decision.
We're gonna use it.
I like
Left enough carrots out there, we think, yeah.
Okay.
All right, next up, we got higher recommendations. Higher recommendation for the year-round code enforcer.
Okay, so we've been taking applications for the year-round code enforcer, and since it is a year-round position, I'm coming before the council for your approval. We basically had 3 applicants. I interviewed all 3. After the interviews, my recommendation is gonna be Brian Voth to hire him at $15 an hour, and that was set in the job description that was approved by the city council. I think all in all, he'll do the best job for the city. Talked about him, about the different, duties he would have to perform and the time he'd have to put in. Talked to him about being a little more proactive too versus reactive, and so it seems like he has no issues with any of that, and
you want a motion?
yes.
I make a motion to approve, Teresa's recommendation to hire Brian Voth as the year-round code enforcement officer.
15.
For the $15.
Oh, at 15, yeah,
Yep.
sure.
Second.
Did Brian have any previous code enforcement or anything similar?
No, none of them really did.
He builds houses at the school.
No, he doesn't.
That's
That's Brian
wrong.
Voss.
Yep, wrong Brian.
Wrong, Brian, yeah.
Holy cow, it is, isn't it? I totally, it doesn't matter, I gotta make it Brian. Wow, it is, I misread that. I totally did. I admit it.
Alright, we got a motion and seconds, we got more discussion?
I can't believe I did that.
Any other questions? Travis?
That's gonna,
Alright,
that's gonna haunt me at the Christmas party.
alright, we'll call the vote. Monahan?
Yeah.
Jones?
Yes.
Brennan? Yep. Keel?
Yes.
Warren? Yeah. And Nelson?
Sure.
You're gonna be surprised to see him in the door, aren't you? So, alright, next up we've got a couple of appointments. Do you want these separate or all in one, Teresa? We usually do these separate. I'll make an appointment and they approve.
Yeah, usually.
Okay.
Might be cleaner that way.
The first appointment is for our official newspaper, and that appointment I would make Minnehaha Messenger.
Motion to approve the appointment.
Second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And for our official healthcare provider, we make the appointment Sanford Clinic here in Hartford.
Motion to approve.
Warren?
Second.
Okay, discussion?
Provider of facility. Is it
Basically, we do this appointment just so if somebody's hurt or whatever, it's to our regulations of where do we take them, yeah, so.
Sure. Okay. More discussion? So it's kind of like facility.
It is the facility.
What?
Okay.
You're noisy tonight.
All right, we'll call a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We have a couple different official depositories, the same we've had the last several years. We have Great Western Bank, Reliant Bank, US Bank, and First National Bank in Sioux Falls.
I make a motion to approve the appointments for the official depositories as mentioned.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Next item up is correspondence, Tree City USA, and Teresa's got more of this data, and probably Craig, but for the 26th year in a row, we have been named Tree City USA, and you sent the article to the Minnehaha County Messenger.
Sweet.
A lot of work that goes into that, it's because of having, just kind of give us some background, it's a
Yeah.
tree board, it's all
Yeah,
these-
so basically, it's kind of a grant process, or, we really don't need any money for it, but basically, you apply for this, it's an application process, I should say. There's certain things that you have to meet to qualify, city, so we have to have a tree board in place, which we do. You have to spend so many dollars per capita, tree activities, so like the boulevard trees that we plant every year, and the cost into the care and maintenance of that go towards it. Our program that we do with the third graders, that also goes towards it, you know, proclaiming Arbor Day, the proclamation we did, you know. Once you fill all those qualifications, you put them in this application, you know, and like I said, if you fill the qualifications, you get the status of being named Tree City USA, and this is the 26th year in a row we've gotten it, so kind of nice honor.
Cool, yeah, good job for everybody. All right, and if I remember correctly, we're going to go to executive session for legal, is that correct?
Yes, it'll be real quick, sorry.
Motion to go to executive session for SDCL 1-25-2.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Yeah.
You said it, right?
So we really don't.
Nelson, you were on a roll tonight.
Yeah.
Are they posting a meeting today? We're gonna have to-
Yes, I am posting it.
I'll be there. It's on the agenda. It's 2 and a half between now and then.
Let me know either way, okay? Make sure you shut off.
I just looked at it.
Hey, Mitch. Hey, Ross. Keep up the good work. We'll see you out there.
They're gonna go to work.
So maybe, yes,
Yep, you guys have a good evening.
I'm just gonna give them that.
Okay.
The other one.
2 minutes, I'll get you out of here.
I did 3.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
All right, 5 to 9.